The U.S. is facing rising consumer prices and supply chain problems. Americans are seeing increasing costs for food, energy, and housing.
New data from overseas shows imports into the U.S. are down since the tariff war started, while exports to other countries are quickly climbing.
This means major powers such as China and India are finding other markets for their products. Madeline Rivera has more from Washington.
Early 2025, Washington painted a big picture of an America that could stand strong on its own, a nation powered only by what it could make and produce at home. But that dream is already facing some tough reality. A new executive order has quietly rolled back tariffs on important imports like nickel, graphite, and medicines. It's a clear sign that the U.S. still depends heavily on supplies from other countries. For automakers and manufacturers, this is now a matter of survival. Either they adapt or they shut down. So, who really benefits from this sudden shift? And how far will the impact reach across global markets and everyday prices? In the first months of 2025, Washington made a big but quiet turn. The bold promise to make America fully self-reliant, free from foreign supply chains, is fading fast. A major executive order just cut tariffs on dozens of critical imports, marking a serious change from the hard trade policies of the past year. Over 45 categories now have tariff exemptions, everything from nickel and gold to medical compounds, rare magnets, and high-efficiency LEDs used in clean energy. This is a big course correction, not because of politics, but because of necessity. The government now admits that America's industries simply cannot stand alone yet. But these tariff cuts come with conditions. They're offered only to countries willing to make trade deals that benefit the U.S. in return. For automakers whose factories rely on these exact resources, this policy could decide who survives and who fails. The move shows a growing gap between political promises and industrial reality. America's economy still depends on the global network it once tried to escape. The truth is simple. The U.S. uses far more raw materials than it can produce. Modern industries like car manufacturing and clean energy rely on metals and minerals that the country cannot fully supply. Nowhere is this clearer than in the auto industry. The electric vehicle boom, once hailed as the future, needs massive amounts of graphite, nickel, and lithium. Yet, in 2024, the U.S. produced none of the 52,000 tons of natural graphite it used. Every bit was imported, and over 90% of the world's processing capacity still sits in China. Even when graphite comes from elsewhere, it usually passes through Chinese factories before reaching U.S. assembly lines. Nickel tells the same story. A little is mined in Michigan, and some comes from recycling. But most still arrives from allies, like Canada and Australia, often refined overseas. The same goes for aluminum, gold, and other key materials. America's own production simply can't meet demand, leaving it tied to imports from countries like Brazil and Jamaica. For automakers, this creates serious instability. Prices move unpredictably, supply chains feel fragile, and policy changes can flip everything overnight. Tariffs can change numbers on paper, but they can't fix this deep imbalance. By 2025, auto tariffs had climbed to 25%, while steel and aluminum duties hit 50%. According to analysts, that added $18 billion in costs for U.S. automakers this year alone. For consumers, that means about $5,000 more for an American-made car and up to $8,500 more for imported ones. Those aren't just statistics. They're real pressure on both companies and customers trying to survive an industry in transition to keep prices manageable. Automakers have been absorbing part of the cost instead of passing it all to buyers. They've cut profits, simplified trims, and hidden small fees in contracts to avoid shocking consumers. But these tricks won't last forever. Electric and luxury cars, which depend more on imported parts, will soon show higher price tags as profits shrink. Industry leaders are split. Some think the tariff rollback is a short-term relief, while others argue that the constant policy swings cause more harm than any single tariff ever could. The uncertainty itself has become a new kind of pressure, testing how long companies can survive before losing their global edge. The real winners and losers depend on which countries can strike the best trade deals with Washington. The message from the White House is clear. Tariff cuts go only to those who give something back. That sparked a race among trading partners to protect their industries. The EU and Japan were first to secure deals, bringing car tariffs down to around 15%. South Korea followed, promising new U.S. investments in exchange for lighter duties. India, once hit with 50% tariffs because of its ties to Russian oil, is now negotiating for rates closer to 10 to 15%. Taiwan is also moving toward reduced tariffs. These shifting deals are reshaping global trade almost overnight. Automakers from countries that win good terms gain a huge advantage, while others face higher costs. This uneven ground is creating new competition in the industry, and because car production runs on years-long planning cycles, sudden policy shifts make every future decision a gamble. Factories, investments, And even car designs now depend as much on diplomacy as on engineering. Trade has turned into a geopolitical chessboard. For ordinary people, these changes are anything but distant. Every policy tweak affects car prices. Tariffs on metals and parts feed directly into what buyers pay. For now, automakers have shielded consumers, but that protection is fading. High interest rates already make loans expensive. Add rising tariffs, and soon, many families may find new cars out of reach. To cope, car makers are exploring new strategies, expanding U.S. production, recycling more materials, and finding new suppliers. But supply chains built over decades can't be rebuilt overnight. It takes years, not months, to shift such complex systems. Until then, buyers will start seeing the impact of trade policies right on dealership floors. A sedan from Germany, a hybrid from Japan, or a truck assembled in America, each will carry a price shaped by the latest trade deals. Washington is also starting new investigations under Section 200, this time targeting imports like polysilicon and wind turbine parts. For industries already under pressure, this means more turbulence ahead. The tariff rollback isn't a clean reset. It doesn't undo the strain of the past year, it just reframes it. America still depends heavily on imported materials, and these exemptions are only temporary relief. The big question remains, how can the U.S. balance its dream of self-sufficiency with the global supply chains that make modern production possible? The divide will soon be visible across showrooms. Cars made with materials from friendly nations will keep steady prices. Others, tied to penalized countries, will fluctuate with every policy change. For buyers, three things will decide what happens next: where parts come from, what trade deals their governments make, and how fast domestic production can grow. If those align, prices may stabilize. If not, car options will shrink, delays will rise, and costs will climb higher. In this shifting world, the companies that mix smart technology with strong diplomacy will be the ones to win. Now, let's turn to Russia, a country that spent more than 2 decades building its power around one man's image of total control. Vladimir Putin created a picture of strength, a leader who stood tall above global chaos. Oil and gas filled the treasury. Billionaires flaunted wealth around the world. Moscow looked like a fortress untouched by outside troubles. But behind that illusion, the foundation was weak. And now, that weakness is cracking wide open. Russia's economy and society are breaking down in ways the government can no longer hide. Across cities and small towns, everyday life is getting harder. Store shelves are emptier each week. Prices climb faster than wages. The ruble keeps losing value. Families are forced to cut spending, choosing between essentials and survival. Factories slow down. Jobs disappear. And what once felt like stability now feels like struggle. Billions of rubles are being poured into the war in Ukraine, draining the national budget and leaving citizens to carry the cost. Public protest has nearly vanished, but quiet anger grows in kitchens, offices, and grocery lines. The financial crisis is matched by a human one. The war is consuming Russia's younger generation at a shocking pace. Many towns are losing their working-age men, either sent to fight or fleeing abroad. Millions have left in search of freedom and better lives. Even official statistics admit the problem. By 2030, Russia could face a shortage of 11 million workers. Factories can't find staff. Supply chains are breaking. Labor shortages are becoming desperate. The government has tried to replace missing workers with migrants, but it's not enough. Entire industries are on the edge of collapse. To stay afloat, Putin's regime leans harder than ever on energy, its old source of power. For decades, oil and gas paid the bills and kept influence alive in Europe, but that strength is fading fast. Drone strikes have damaged key refineries, knocking out more than 13% of capacity. Production is falling, stockpiles are shrinking, and foreign buyers are turning elsewhere. Every new hit chips away at Russia's image as an energy giant. Without that dominance, the Kremlin is losing both its wealth and the global leverage that once made it feared.